Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining me. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Lior Samfiru. I'm the employment lawyer. You know me, you've seen me before. I'm one of the founding partners of Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. You'll find us practicing employment law in Ontario, in British Columbia, in Alberta. And I'm here now for you live for the next 30 minutes answering your questions about employment law. This session is for you. It's not for me. It's for you. It's for you to get those questions answered. Maybe you're dealing with a workplace problem. Your boss did something to you or said something to you, and you want to know if it's legal. Maybe you're given an ultimatum. You have to respond by tomorrow. What to say, what to do. Ask the question. I'll tell you. Maybe you just lost your job. Maybe your job has changed. Maybe your pay is not the same. You name it. If it touches on your work, if it touches on employment, this is the employment law session where you can ask questions and get those answers. So you have an opportunity now. Type in your question, hit enter. I will see it, I will read it, and I will, of course, get going with those answers. So again, my name is Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer, and I am here for you for the next 30 minutes answering questions. Now, before I get to answering questions, I want to give you some contact information. You may need to or want to connect with me off social media, off air. Easy to do, and I encourage you and I want you to do it. All you have to do is go to employmentlawyer.ca. You see that address right over here, employmentlawyer.ca, and you can get my phone number there, not just mine, everyone on my team. Our email addresses are all there. You can fill out a form, and of course, you can read a lot more about employment law there. So employmentlawyer.ca, your one-stop shop to get that employment law help that you need in Ontario, in BC, and in Alberta. But right now, you don't even need to worry about that. Right now, I'm here live for you. I'm here making sure that you get answers to those questions. So why don't you ask? Let's make sure that when you turn off your computer, when you close your browser, you know more about your rights than you did before. I'm going to start answering questions right now. Ask your questions. Don't just listen. Don't just read. Ask questions. Make it interesting for yourself and for me. Okay, let's get going with some answering. All right, first question from Brian, who is joining us on Reddit. What can I do if my employer does not uphold their end of the severance agreement? Well, first of all, an agreement, a severance agreement, is a contract. What I mean by that is if you signed and the employer signed that they'll pay you X amount when you lose your job, the company has to abide by it. And if they don't, you can take legal action, and it's very easy to get that resolved because that signed document is very powerful. So a company is not going to breach it. But something else to consider. Maybe you signed that severance agreement and the company breached it. That actually now may give you an out, because unless you had legal advice, it's quite possible that that severance agreement that you signed, that severance deal, is not a good deal. It's a bad deal. You may actually want out of it. So if your company is not abiding by it, you have an opportunity now to say, well, I know we agreed on 6 months, but I'm actually owed 10 months of severance. So let's get that. So if you're in that situation, the company breached the agreement, call me. Let's make sure that the deal that you had is fine. We don't want to enforce a deal that's a bad deal. Let's use that to get you your full entitlements. But if the deal that you reach with the company is good and they're not abiding by it, often just a letter from me will fix that problem right away. So again, Brian, to connect with me and my team, very, very easy to do. Just go to employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca, and I will take it from there. So thank you for that. Good question, Brian. Appreciate it. See how easy it is, of course. Brian asked the question. He got an answer. Now he knows. You could do the same thing. I'm Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer with Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. And as I've done, I'm going to continue doing, going to answer questions. That's what I'm here to do. So be that second voice here on social media. Ask your question and give me that chance to help you. Okay, let's see. Next question comes to me from Ark on YouTube. My former employer is trying to access my computer email after I resigned. My company email after I resigned. Are they allowed to do this? Should I be concerned about anything? So your computer email and anything on the work computer, frankly, is the property of the company. So yes, you have to always assume that anything that's on a work email, the company can access and they have a right to access. So there's nothing that you can do about that. Now, if you are also checking your personal email, and they can obviously try to get into that, but anything that you did on a work computer and anything you did on work email, they have a right to. So if you don't want the company to see, or you're doing certain things that are private, either don't use work email, and also don't use a work computer. Do it on a personal computer and use email that's a personal email. So that's how that works. You don't really have a right to privacy when it comes to things that the company owns. Okay, in this case, the computer, the email. So hopefully that helps, Ark. If it doesn't, feel free to ask any follow-up question, but certainly something that I've been asked before, an important question. So thank you for that. 2 down, many more to come, I hope. So ask your question right now. Give me that opportunity to read it and to help you. Nothing I like better than answering questions. So I'm here live, Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer. This is your employment law session. Learn about employment law, get those questions answered. All right, next question, continuing from Darwin, joins us on Facebook. Can a company claim to own any of your developed ideas while you are employed by them? There was an intellectual property clause in my contract, but what if I'm designing software on my own time? So really, it comes down to that agreement that you sign. If you sign an agreement that says that anything that you design while you are an employee, we own, if you've agreed to that, then unfortunately you entered into a very bad deal. But even if you design software on your own time, you sign the contract saying that they own it. So that's a problem. On the other hand, the only thing the contract says, if you design something during work hours, or if you design something related to work, we own that, then that's fine. So the question is, what did you sign? A company does not have a right to things that you do on your own time unless you sign an agreement that gives them right to those things. So if you're someone that creates software, that invents things, you want to be careful what you give the company the right to have. You don't want them to say that, well, you've invented this gadget that has nothing to do with work. It could be worth $10 million, but because you sign an agreement that says that we'll own it, we own it, and we don't have to pay you anything for it. So you want to be very, very careful with that and what you sign. That's why, yet another reason, if you're about to start a new job, or if you're having an employment agreement put in front of you, you want to call me. You want me to see it? Let me read it, tell you what it does before you sign it. It can be very, very costly to sign an employment agreement and then realizing that you made a mistake. So Darwin, hopefully that helps. Good question there, very important one. And hopefully you get the answer, but feel free to call me or email me, connect with me through employmentlawyer.ca, right there, employmentlawyer.ca. All right, continuing to ask questions. By the way, we still have plenty of time. Ask your question right now. Last week, it happened again. I was saying, okay, goodbye, thank you. And then all of a sudden, I got 3 questions right at the end. I didn't get a chance to answer them. Don't do that. Yeah, so much time right now. So ask your question right now. Okay, Christina, welcome. Christina is joining us, I believe, from YouTube. Christina says, my employer has given me the option to accept a layoff or termination with 3 weeks of additional work. I'm not sure what my rights are here. They aren't offering to pay out my vacation pay. So the vacation pay is easy. They have to pay it out. There's no question. There's no discretion here. But the real question is, what are you owed as a result of losing your job? And, well, if they're offering to put you on a temporary layoff, they don't have a right to do that. And you're owed more than 3 weeks. So what you haven't told me, Christina, is how long you've worked there, your age, or the type of job that you have. So I can't tell you if 3 weeks is a good deal. Well, I can tell you that it's not, because pretty much everyone, the amount that you're owed starts at 2 months. It starts at 2 months, and it could be as much as 24 months. So you're going to be owed more than 3 weeks any way you slice it. So the real question is, what are you owed? So here's, Christina, how you can find out how much you're owed. And here's how all our viewers can find out how much you're owed. Just grab your smartphone, grab your tablet, and go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Again, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. And you see that address right now, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. There we have our severance calculator. When we say severance, we're simply talking about the amount that you're owed if you lose your job. Go to the severance calculator. You answer a few questions. It's free. It's anonymous. It takes seconds. You're going to input your age, your position, and the type of job, and it's going to tell you how many months of severance, of pay you are owed as a result of losing your job. And Christina, you're telling me that you're 40 now, over 3 years. I've been there for a little over 3 years, but I've worked with them for the last 10 years off and on. It's a not-for-profit. So if you've been there with them for 10 years, you may be a 10-year employee, could be owed a year's pay. But even if you're only a 3-year employee, you're probably owed 4 or 5 months pay. Okay? Now, I mentioned our severance calculator. You can find that at pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Input that, and you can find out there how much you're owed. It's free. It's anonymous. It takes seconds. Okay? Over 2 million people have used it already. So use it as well, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. But Christina, 3 weeks is nonsense. You're probably owed, frankly, anywhere from 4 to 12 months of pay, depending on whether or not we can get you credit for the full 10 years you've been with them. And we may absolutely be able to. But even if we can get you only credit for 3 years, you're still looking at 4 or 5 months or so of severance. So that's what you're owed. So forget about the 3 weeks. It's nonsense. It's irrelevant. It's not even close. So the next step, Christina, is call me, okay, or email me. You can do that through employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. And I'm glad that Christina brought this scenario up because I see this exact same scenario many times a day. Company says, these are your options. When in fact, wait a second, there's a different option, and that is you comply with the law. You do what the law says. So she can take a layoff or she can get 3 weeks notice. No, she can also get 5 months or even as much as 12 months of severance. So none of the above. So just because the company says these are your options doesn't mean those are really your options. There's another option, which is to do what the law says and to get what the law says you should be getting. All right. So keep that in mind. If you're ever in that situation, a company gives you an ultimatum, gives you a choice, there's likely a different choice, a better choice, a better option. And you can start by reaching me and find out what it is. Let's talk about it. Employmentlawyer.ca. Or right now, you can ask questions, just like Christina, just like all the other people that have asked questions. And I'm going to continue answering questions right now. But as you're listening to me, ask your question as well. We have a question from Lemon Swirl on Reddit. My company laid me off with 4 days notice, saying they are temporarily closing. Is that legal? Do they owe me any severance if they don't reopen or don't recall me? So they owe you severance right now. Okay, you don't even have to wait and see what happens. So you have 2 options. You can wait and see what happens and then see, or you can consider your employment as being terminated right now. Here's why you don't want to wait, okay? Because if you wait, there may not be any money. That money may have gone, that people have disappeared, and then you won't be able to get anything because we can't find anything or anyone. You need to act on this right now. And again, I don't know how long you've been there and the type of job that you had and your age, but again, you're going to be owed months of severance, months. Maybe it's 2 months, maybe it's 24 months, depending on those factors, but it's going to be months. So waiting doesn't make any sense in this situation. You can treat your employment as being terminated now. The company doesn't have a right to put you off work temporarily. They don't have that right. They don't have a right to put you on a temporary layoff. You can consider that to be a termination of your employment and get your severance. So again, reach me. Let's have a discussion about that. You can do that through employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. Again, another very, very important question. And a lot of times I see that people say, well, a company put me on a temporary layoff. They're slowing down, they're shutting down temporarily. I guess I just have to sit at home and wait. No, you don't. You can get your severance and move on to a different job. And that may be better than waiting months and seeing what happens. And maybe then the company is gone and disappeared and you're kind of left holding the bag. You don't want to be in that situation. All right. So if you're put off work temporarily, it's time, I think, to say, no, I'm not accepting this. This is a termination. I'm going to get my severance. I'm going to work on my resume and take a job somewhere else. So that's what you have the option of doing. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca to connect with me and my team so we can get to work and make that happen. All right. Let's see. I'm continuing to answer question. Next one comes to us from Sharon. Sharon says, I was just let go from my position after 13 years. They offered me 3 weeks per year. Is this a fair offer? I'm 64 and I was considering working another few years. No, it's not even close to being fair. So 13 years, 3 weeks per year, that's what, 39 weeks, right? Hopefully my math is not wrong. Well, for you, 64, 13 years, I still don't know the type of job, but you're probably looking at least at a year's pay, a year, 12 months, and potentially as much as 14 or 15 months. So a year would be an extra 3 months on the low end, and it could be more than that. So no, that's not a good offer. It's not a fair offer, and it's not really even close. So by the way, that's what we call a wrongful dismissal. A wrongful dismissal is when you're let go and you're not paid your proper severance. It's as simple as that. In this case, after 13 years at the age of 64, you're gonna be owed more than 39 weeks pay. Okay, you're looking, 39 is roughly what, I guess, 9 months. You should be at least 12 and potentially more than that. So Sharon, the next step, as I've been saying, connect with me through employmentlawyer.ca. Let me get to work to help you. Phone number is there, email address there, and we can get to work. All right, more questions just came in. I'm just going to remind you before I answer them who I am in case you just joined us. My name is Lior Samfiru. I'm the employment lawyer with Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. You find me and my team in Ontario and Alberta and in BC. If you need help with your workplace rights, with your job, with your boss, with your severance, constructive dismissal, you're talking with the right person, and it can start right now by asking a question about your rights. All right, lots of questions. I love them, but bring them on. Brennan on YouTube says, when working for an American company, are your entitlements any different? Absolutely not. As long as you work in Canada, it's the laws of the province that you work in, Canadian laws, that apply to you. Doesn't matter if the company is American, if it's European, if it's somewhere from out of continent, it does not matter. It's not the laws of where the company is based that matters. It's the laws of where you physically work. Okay, if you physically work in Ontario, for example, it's the laws of Ontario that apply to you. And that is an amazingly good thing. In the US, they have very different employment laws. They're not anywhere near as good as the laws that we have across Canada. So you don't want US laws to apply to you. Okay, you don't want the company to have the right to let you go without any pay at any time, which they can in the United States, cannot do that in Canada. So just because you're working for an American company does not matter. The laws here that apply to you, you have the same rights, the same protections as every other employee in the province where you work. Okay, so keep that in mind. Any issues, any problems, call me or email me. Do that through employmentlawyer.ca. All right, very good question. I've been getting a lot of questions about American company, European companies. Well, now you know. All right, let's see. Next question, Diane. Diane on Facebook. Welcome, Diane. Thanks for the question. And Diane says, termination without cause during a gradual return to work, claiming restructuring. Can they do that? I'm confident that my human rights were violated and they're asking me to sign a full release. Should I? Well, okay, so if in fact the reason had anything to do with your medical condition or the fact you are in a gradual return to work, if the reason for letting you go had anything at all to do with that, then it is in fact a human rights violation, okay? A company cannot let you go because you're sick, because you had a disability, because you need accommodation. That is illegal. Even if that's not the only reason, but just one of the reasons, it's still illegal. It's still a human rights violation. Can't do that. Illegal, not possible at all. So right off the bat, we have an issue here. The second issue is, even without knowing anything about this company, I can almost guarantee you, Diane, that whatever they've offered you in terms of a severance package is not even close to being adequate. And that's even if the termination is legitimate, even if it's not a human rights violation, if it's just a big restructuring and you're just kind of caught in the middle of it, I can guarantee you almost that whatever they've offered you, not even close. Because in 90+% of cases, that's what it is. So should you sign this release? Absolutely not. That would be crazy to do. Okay, no way. Human rights violation, and even apart from that, I guarantee you're going to be owed more. So what do you do instead? Well, you connect with me. Connect with me, my team. You can do that today if you want through employmentlawyer.ca. I'll give you that address again, and it's on the screen as well. employmentlawyer.ca. Let's sit down. Let's talk about it. I want to find out more about this restructuring, how many people were affected, what they said to you, and of course, review what they've offered you. And then, and only then, can we talk about what happens next. So hopefully that makes sense, Diane. I'm looking forward to connecting with you. Employmentlawyer.ca. Yeah, so Brennan, who asked about working for an American company, says the employer keeps saying it's at will, but I didn't think that could be the case in Canada. You're absolutely right. In the US, they have what we call at will employment. Really, that means the company can do whatever it wants. Does not happen in Canada, doesn't exist. Even if you signed a piece of paper that says you're an at will employee, that's not even worth the paper it's written on, okay? Because you can't contract out of the laws that we have here. So a company that does that obviously is not very sophisticated, and they didn't get very good legal advice, but you know better. So any issues, any problems, I got your back. Employmentlawyer.ca. All right. More questions. You still have a few minutes, guys. So I want to see some of those questions coming in now. More of those questions. I want to know that when I shut down my browser, I've answered everything. I don't want to be wondering, I wonder if someone else didn't get a chance to ask their question. You have time. You have that opportunity. Ask your question. I'm still here, not going anywhere yet. So ask your question. All right. Next question from N Funny on Reddit. Great name. Are you allowed to have cannabis in your possession while at work if you're not using it? My employer found some in our lockers and says he will be docking hours from whoever is responsible. So if your employer has a policy that says you're not allowed to bring this into the workplace, well, then guess what? Then if you did, you can be disciplined. They can't dock hours, by the way. An employer, no matter what, is not going to be able to dock hours. What they could potentially do is give you a warning, maybe even potentially a paid, not unpaid, paid suspension. They can't dock your hours. But the question is, did you do something wrong? And you've only done something wrong if the company has a policy, cannabis is not allowed in the workplace. I'm not even talking about using cannabis. That you shouldn't do in the workplace, no matter what. But it's okay to bring it into the workplace as long as the company doesn't have a policy that you know of that says otherwise. But even if you breach their policy, that does not mean they can dock your pay. That's almost never going to be legal. In fact, a company does not have a right to dock pay. It's as simple as that. That's a breach of employment standards. So now you know, and funny, and if you have any problems, any issues, if the company does anything to you that they're not allowed to, reach me through employmentlawyer.ca. Okay, so let's see. We have another question here from Sam. Sam on YouTube says, what happens if I give my 2 weeks notice and I'm terminated the same day? Am I owed any severance at all? So generally speaking, in that scenario, the company has to still pay you for the 2 weeks, okay? So if you give 2 weeks notice, they say, well, we don't care. We want you gone today. They still have to pay you up. So yeah, they can tell you to go, but they have to pay you. If they don't pay you, well, that's illegal. That's a wrongful dismissal, believe it or not, because they've actually terminated your employment. And when you terminate employment, you have to pay the employee severance. In this case, your severance is going to be limited to 2 weeks because you already told them you're not going to continue working beyond it. So you can't necessarily get more than 2 weeks, but you still have to get paid for the 2 weeks. So if they don't do that, you can reach me. Happy to connect with you, employmentlawyer.ca. And lots of questions today, but I'm not done, so you shouldn't be done either. Let's make sure that you get more answers to your questions, or if you have a follow-up question, or one of the questions that I've answered triggered something in your mind that you've always wondered about, no need to wonder. You've got time. You got a computer in front of you, maybe your phone. Type in that question, hit enter. I'll see it. I'll read it. I'll answer it. Again, if you're just joining me, my name is Lior Samfiru. I am the employment lawyer. And they call me that because that's what I do every day. I help resolve workplace problems. So my team is there, I'm here, and right now I'm live answering questions like I do every Wednesday at this time. So if you're watching, great, but ask a question as well. All right, next question is from Bass. My company fired me for misconduct. My company fired me for misconduct and used a write-up from 3 years ago to say they had cause? Is there anything I can do, or do I have to accept a for-cause termination? I actually spoke about this on my radio show last night. So by the way, I host a radio show that you can hear several times a week at different places in the province. If you go to our website, employmentlawyer.ca, you'll find out more about it. But talked about a similar scenario yesterday on the show. So no, a company can't go that far back to use a warning that you got or discipline to affect you now. So if 3 years ago the company gave you a final warning for something that you did, well, 3 years later, if you do something again, the company can't say, hey, remember 3 years ago when we told you that this is a final warning? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't really continue to apply. Usually kind of a year is the most that they can go back. So no, it's if they still want you gone, the law is going to consider that to be a without cause termination, meaning the company is going to have to pay your full severance. So no, the company can't go that far back to try to rely on something that you did to punish you and to terminate you for cause because of it. Okay. So let's see. Next question comes to us from Tanya. The Department of Labor has told the employer they have to pay, but also says they can't make them do it. What else can be done? So first of all, I'm not sure what you mean Department of Labor. We don't have Department of Labor in Canada. So maybe you're talking about the US. I don't know. In Canada, we have the Ministry of Labor, we have employment standards, and in Canada, yes, the Ministry of Labor can make the company pay. But I generally don't recommend going to the Ministry of Labor unless you're dealing with an overtime issue or a vacation pay issue. For anything else, really going to the government is not the way to go. For that, you need an employment lawyer like myself, and that's what you do. So if you're talking about something in the U.S., Tanya, I have no clue about what's going on in the U.S. and what the laws are there and what the Department of Labor can or cannot do. We don't have a Department of Labor in Canada. Okay, let's see. Next question. This may end up being the last question unless we get something else in the meantime. This is from Jen on YouTube. After an incident of harassment and bullying from a manager, I was transferred to another location and demoted from manager to an entry-level position. What are my rights? Completely illegal, what you've described there, Jen. Not even close. Number one is if you're being harassed and mistreated, the company has to deal with that. They can't punish you. It's illegal to punish someone because they're complaining about harassment or they're a victim of harassment and bullying. Illegal. Can't do that. Okay? That's what we call a reprisal. Reprisal is when you're punished because you're standing up for your rights and you're demanding that the company enforce your rights. So right off the bat, that's illegal. There could be financial consequences, penalties, fines, damages that they have to pay you just by virtue of that demotion. But even if we forget the harassment completely, let's assume there's no harassment. Even in that situation, a company does not have a right to demote you. Okay? A demotion can result in what I call a constructive dismissal. So if you're demoted, you're a manager, now you're not a manager, now you're an entry-level position, that's a constructive dismissal. You can treat that as a termination and get your full severance. You don't have to accept that. A company can't just demote you. So even if we forget about the harassment, it's illegal. And we're not going to forget about the harassment. So it's even more illegal. So Jen, you know what to do now. I hope you do. Well, if not, I'm going to remind you, you contact me. You call her or you email, and you can get that contact information at employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. You see that on the screen right now. Do that. Use it. I want to talk to you. All right. Great questions today, guys. Such a privilege to always be here and to answer questions and to try to help as much as I can. I'll be back next week, but don't wait until then. Okay. Let's connect through employmentlawyer.ca in the meantime. One of my colleagues, Alex Lucifero, is going to be here tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern to talk about employment law and disability law. You can watch him here as well. I'll be back next week. But for now, if you have questions, you have problems, let's make sure we connect. Jen, you said you're connecting now. Fantastic. Employmentlawyer.ca, the way to do that. Guys, thank you so much for joining me here every week. Really enjoy being here. I'll talk to you again very soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye now.